Oh, no, there's stuff to do in Philadelphia. There's definitely stuff to do. Yeah.
All right.
There's like good historic sites and stuff. There's some good walking tours you can do, and some fun things to see. Yeah.
Historic sites. This is from the 60s.
All right, stop. Just stop. So full of yourself. I don't have to be here. Like, I can be
But we're
elsewhere.
so happy you are. We're so happy you are. That may not be coming through, but we're very happy that you're here.
I believe that you're happy I'm here, Allie. I am getting the usual amount of engagement from Matt.
Oh, I'm very happy you're here. I couldn't have made that joke otherwise. Sorry.
Oh, we're being told. Sorry,
this being hailed already.
Sorry. This just in. We have to start the show. We can't dilly dally anymore.
No dilly dallying. Okay. Yep. Hello and welcome back to Random and Memorable. I'm Matt, and I'm here today with Rue and Ali. It has been an absolute age. I feel like our calendars only get more busy, so we have lots of hosts now, and we rarely get to see each other.
It's nice to see you, Matt. I don't think I've seen you since the beginning when I joined the podcast team.
I had to blow the dust off the microphone, like literally, like get the dust off, so I wasn't inhaling dust.
Look at that. We should also take a moment to shout out MVP Sarah, who has been on every episode so far this season. That's pretty incredible.
I actually was thinking about that I think her and I, every single main show, we've played a lot of games together too on the podcast, where she has won a lot of them, I think. So way to go, Sarah.
I love that. This is also our last episode of the current season. And for those keeping count, it's also our 170th episode. Can you believe that?
You and I started this with just the two of us just being like, should we just like record ourselves talking? And then that first episode was binned, and then the second one was okay. Yeah, it's weird that this thing is still going, that we are still here. That's amazing.
170 episodes, and I feel like I started it probably a decade into being at 1Password. So
yes, same. Wow. Okay.
Oh my goodness. So after this episode, we will be taking a short break while we plan the next season. We're also cooking up some bonus episodes, so keep an eye on our podcast feed and our YouTube channel. But anyway, let's focus on the fully loaded episode that we have for you today. We're going to be talking about one of my favorite things, all things vibe coding, which I hate that term. So every time I say that, I think I'm going to apologize. I prefer agentic development.
No,
Can I get away with that?
Yeah. Agentic engineering, agentic development.
Okay. Oh, it was 50-50 there. Ali was a no, Rue was a yes.
Yeah.
I don't do much with vibes, if I'm honest. So I feel like agentic development I'm happier with. But like vibe coding, first Rue is going to walk through what vibe coding actually means in Crash Course, why it's suddenly everywhere, and how people are using AI tools to kind of build apps, websites, games, and workflows. My 2 cents is on him, pushing his own app during that time. It's going to become one big advertising space. Then in Watchtower Weekly, we'll look at the security side of that trend, because research has shown a lot of people are leaking sensitive stuff through their vibe-coded apps. And then after that, Wade will be sitting down with Jeff Malnick, 1Password's VP of Engineering for Developer and AI, for a conversation about coding securely with AI, best practices for developers, and how 1Password is thinking about the future of AI-assisted software development. And of course, we'll end with one final round of identity theft. So lots to get into today. Rue, did you want to kick off the vibe coding talk with Crash Course?
Yeah, let's do Crash Course. Let's get in here. So I think it's helpful for us to start off with definition of what vibe coding actually is before we unpack it a little bit more in Watchtower Weekly. And I know that Jeff is going to go into greater detail in his interview later on. At this point, you've probably heard the term vibe coding. It's been out in the air for a while now. It was named Word of the Year by the Collins Dictionary in 2025. It's the process of leveraging an AI assistant to write software based on natural language prompts. And the piece of it that is the vibe comes from the fact that like you get to communicate in whatever way is most comfortable to you. You can talk to the chat bot, you can talk to the large language model in sort of like your natural language, and it will then turn that into software code that a computer can compile and run and understand. So let's say that you want to build a new personal website. With vibe coding, you can describe that ideal website to an AI-powered tool, and it'll then generate that code for you. And afterwards, you can edit the code if you need to, or you can go back and tell it, hey, I want to change this. I want this to look different. The tool decides what code to write by drawing on open source code bases that were used to train its large language model. And then behind the scenes, that LLM matches your prompt request to the code it's been trained on, and then uses that to generate new code for your project. You'll typically do all of this in an app like Codex or Claude Code. These provide built-in AI functionality. Before we get deeper into this, I know I've been vibe coding my own projects. If any of you have ever wanted to have an app that shows you Fahrenheit and Celsius at the same time, there's a great app that's on the App Store now called 40 Below. You should go check it out.
There it
is.
It's
fantastic. I don't know that Anna's going to allow that to stay in, but we're going to do it anyway. So that's been something I worked on for a little bit between like December and March, April timeframe. What about you? Have either of you built anything, and have you shipped anything?
You know, I think I'm realizing why I stuck my nose up on agentic engineering. I think between the three of us, I'm probably in my day-to-day work the least technical. So while I represent and communicate technical concepts into plain language, so when you say agentic engineering, it feels too technical or off-putting for a product marketing manager who has vibe coded, and I relate more with that because, as you said, Brew, just being able to prompt and plug stuff in is very accessible and easy for me. There's been a couple of vibe coded projects that I've done at work for our sales team, which has been fun. So return on investment calculators, and using tools where I can literally just use Whisperflow to build a whole app is pretty incredible.
I think we probably have the three levels of like being technical here. Like I'm somewhere in the middle because I have built an app and put it on the store, which I'm ridiculously proud of. It's not that great. It doesn't do that much, but like my goodness, when you hit buttons, does it have a flamboyant animation?
And, I love that.
I've also and we were speaking about like being here a long time. In my entire time here, I have now put up 3 PRs. One of them was a very long time ago, and then 2 of them recently. And like that's down to kind of agentic development as well. I think there is like a scale and a spectrum from kind of like vibe coding on one side and like not looking at the output or understanding it, and then on the other end kind of like basically like infrastructure stuff and things that you wouldn't kind of allow an LLM to touch, and then like kind of somewhere in the middle is agentic development maybe. But like I think I never would have been able to contribute some of the small front end design changes and that type of thing that I've been able to push to the kind of 1Password project without these tools. So I think it's certainly given the design profession a massive shakeup.
Absolutely.
And I think it's certainly given us a bit of a superpower, but you have to kind of like change your thinking of what it all is in order to kind of take a hold of it.
Yeah. Allie, have you, in the stuff that you have built, have you found a way to leverage your expertise, the things that you know deeply and you know really well, to then create tools around that? Is that something that you've been able to like connect those dots through the use of an LLM?
You know what? I'm sure every job function in some capacity has been shaken up by this, but I think product marketing certainly is being transformed by the AI movement, but in a really positive way, I think, right? Of accelerating our ability to get stuff out in the world and connect the dots maybe a little bit quicker.
Yeah. I do agree, by the way, that there is like a difference between vibe coding and agentic engineering. Like I think that agentic engineering is what you are going to find more classically trained software developers doing. Like that's the type of thing. Whereas when you get folks who have not had the same sort of technical exposure to the guts of software development, that to me is vibe coding. And then there's levels in between. Vibe coding was a term that was invented by Andrej Karpathy, and he was an AI researcher who worked at OpenAI. There's the folks that make ChatGPT. Just joined Anthropic, the people who make Claude. In a social media post, Karpathy described it as the moment you fully give into the vibes, embrace exponentials, and forget that the code even exists. Matt, has that sort of been like your experience coming in as someone who draws pretty rectangles and wanted to turn them into clickable pretty rectangles?
Now I know why Matt hates vibe coding.
I've never been drawn into vibes in my entire life. Yeah. I mean, generally that was my experience. The ability to go from this is a static mock-up of intent, and like we want to build something like this, and kind of like working out the details, and really like a really good design was still a good plan. And like there wasn't anything that you could kind of do from that to the piece where we are today, where like you can kind of give it a design system, some good hints, and then kind of like, nudge it from there. Generally, it has opened up reasonable software a lot more. The other end of software has become a lot more attractive. I can vibe code all I like, but man, if someone has done it who has like really good taste, really good understanding of the problem, I will download that in a heartbeat over building it myself. And that is, I think, the thing that has changed in the last few months. I really thought that kind of like independent software was going to really struggle. And actually, I'm looking for it more than more. So I think that describes it perfectly.
So like there's still expertise that you need to bring into this, and I think that this is very much a still a garbage in, garbage out system. It maybe like it puts a little bit more of a filter on it, but the level of instruction that you can give to this thing and the details you can provide it and the context that you can load it up with, all of those things drive the outcome in a way that you can't just be like, build me an app that does this, and it's just going to like nail it, and you'd be like, great, that's on the store now. Like for the app I was building, I had a version of it in like less than an hour, right? I literally was like, hey, go build this thing that shows Fahrenheit and Celsius at the same time. Great. It was like, here you go, your app is done. And then it took me like 4 months to get it store ready, to get it to the point where I actually wanted other people to see it. And so like there's a lot of countless prompts that went into that. And even if like you don't look at the underlying code and you're only looking at the output, you still have to understand how to bring this vision that you have to life. And Matt,
that's the critical thinking piece though, right? So there are many people that would have stopped at your first stage. And that I think is one of the interesting things I'm seeing is AI is making everyone's idea seem great and easy. And the iteration that I think, Rue, you probably go through because of your background in knowing what good looks like, what customer facing looks like. If you don't have that, AI makes it really easy for you to prompt it with your idea and for AI to say, phenomenal idea, I love it, and here's the version of it, right? So that critical thinking piece, I think, is the human part that's so important, that changes from garbage in, garbage out to iteration and refine. Yeah.
It's Homer Simpson's car. That's what AI creates. And you kind of have to like iterate on it from there.
God, I could put more cup holders in this app. You're right. That's the takeaway, right? That we should figure out ways to put more into everything that we're building.
Absolutely.
So we've had this massive explosion. More people are shipping software these days. More people are building things, even if they're not shipping it externally. And it's a lot of fun. Like that's a whole separate conversation we can have just around like the dopamine hit that you get from building in this way. There's also like a lot of risk involved. Like developers, security professionals, they've warned about the dangers. We have warned about the dangers and limitations of vibe coding. You don't have to have the deep technical knowledge, the experience, the skills to review the final code. And so it's really easy for things like security vulnerabilities to slip through the cracks, or for secrets to be exposed through the tools, either to the tools or because the tools have just built something in a certain way, it's really easy to make mistakes that can be pretty catastrophic. So it doesn't mean that you shouldn't take advantage of these tools by any means, but there are ways that you can use them safely and intentionally, and then use your prompts and review the final code or ask a developer you trust to review it on your behalf. This is something that we, as all of this was ramping up and exploding, we thought about this immediately. Like of course, it's the first thing that we reached for, which is like, how can we help solve this problem? Secrets are being leaked out into the world. We're starting to see more of this. More people are contributing. Allie, as you've been getting more involved with the developer tools side of the house, can you talk a little bit about some of the stuff we've been building and what folks should expect to see from us here?
Yeah, I mean, I think similar to what we have just talked about, the reality is like AI is making software creation so much more accessible to a wider group of people, right? Matt, you've just said it's transforming those designers from here's my idea to let me fully execute it. And Rue, as you said, it's super exciting. But I think the critical thing is if you are building something useful or impactful, you're probably connecting apps or services or API keys, one tool to another tool, and they all need credentials. And as you said, Rue, that's what's happening, right? Is this sprawl of these machine secrets. And, I think one of the risky parts of AI tools is that if you're prompting and you're kind of working in a silo, and for the folks like me, maybe, who aren't super familiar with how important it is to store those secrets and those API keys somewhere safely, AI will probably just tell you to store it in a environment file or paste it in a config file or just store it on your local machine, which I think works in the moment. But as you're kind of alluding to, like, this is what starts to create that hidden risk. So yeah, I mean, at 1Password, we're doing what we always do, which is making the secure way, the easy way. And our developer tools, Rue and Matt, this isn't anything net new. We've had these for several years now. But I think just kind of doubling down on how we're surfacing these up to folks so that they know that, we're really trying to help keep builders. So even if you're not a developer, but how can we help you keep your secrets in 1Password and then use them directly in the tools and workflows where you're already working, right? So a couple of things that we've done recently is we've updated all our developer support documentation. So this is a big one for folks. We've got quick start guides. So if you are someone like me who is maybe just playing around with a vibe coding tool and you're not a deep software engineer, we've got some accessible documentation, which I think will really help folks kind of understand, if I'm building with AI, how can I do it safely? And what is the best option for me to store these secrets? And I think, one of the things that we do is point folks to 1Password environments. So this is where it makes it really easy to manage your environment variables that your app will probably need without leaving those secrets stored on your device. And then the other thing just to shout out is because it's becoming more accessible, I think the case for leveraging 1Password developer tools is bigger. So folks are going to start to see developer in the sidebar of their 1Password desktop app. And I would encourage you, if you're building with AI, to check out what we have to offer, because I think certainly if you're already using 1Password, it makes sense for you to store these machine secrets alongside the human password and logins that you already have.
Yeah, very exciting. And I can't emphasize enough how much this is us taking something that already existed and being like, oh, like this applies perfectly to this new world that's out there.
And yeah, this is all included. Like there's no add-on, there's no buy the developer tools. This is something that y'all, before my time at 1Password, saw the importance of, and it's in the app, right? So I feel like you're right. That's important to mention. Yep,
100%. Matt, I think this is probably a pretty good segue into Watchtower Weekly, where we're going to talk about some of our stuff that's in the news around some of this stuff. Do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, absolutely. So Watchtower Weekly is our segment where we unpack the latest news in cybersecurity and privacy. This week, we're keeping on the topic of vibe coding, and specifically a recent Wired story that really caught our attention. Researchers looked at thousands of AI-built apps that had been published on the open web and found that more than 5,000 had little to no meaningful security or authentication. Around 40% of those reportedly exposed sensitive data, things like medical information, financial data, corporate presentations, strategy documents, and customer chat logs. And I think that's a useful way into the conversation, because this is one of those topics where it is very easy to either overly get excited or overly alarmed. And that's the thing. The promise of vibe coding is genuinely, it is really exciting. People describe the app or the workflow that they want in plain English and have AI help build it. This opens up software creation to a much wider group, as we've been talking. But like marketers, operators, founders, students, all of them. One article I read actually cited that roughly 63% of vibe coding users are now non-developers. So the question is, is this happening? It's because it clearly is. The question is, like, what happens when it becomes really easy to build and publish software, but the security checks aren't moving at the same speed? What do you both think about this? Like, have you seen examples of where vibe coding genuinely feels useful, especially for prototypes or internal tools? And where do you think the risk element starts to kind of creep in?
I think that the risk really is one of culture. If a company has built a culture around secure coding practices and security in general, as we have, and I realize I bring an enormous bias to this conversation because we're like, oh, like this is how we operate. Like, we just know this stuff. This is like it's so in our DNA and in the culture and the zeitgeist of everything at 1Password. So if you are a company that already operates in that way, you're going to be in a much better position overall. I think that it's where companies don't have a security first posture, or don't have sort of like baseline rules of what's acceptable and what's not, that they can just get themselves in trouble very, very quickly without even realizing it. There's nothing malicious here. Like, it is just, it's happening because there's no checks or balances, or no knowledge that it shouldn't be happening this way. And I think that we're gonna find a real rash of like exposures in the next couple of years, as people are like, oh dang, like that was wrong. Oops, we made a big mistake here.
I think too, Rue, yes, culturally, broadly at a company that like 1Password is security first, but I also think of it as like the culture and expertise of engineering, right? So software engineers understand that you go through usually there's a development process, right? That includes Q&A and review and where you're storing your environment files. And is this for a development and test environment, or is this for the production environment? Am I using the right API keys for it? That is very much a part of how you work and how your teams work and how they've learned to do their job. But someone like me is coming in and I'm just prompting and relying heavily on AI to tell me, one, what is an API key? Two, okay, I guess I'll just put this on my desktop. It's, AI tools and these vibe coded tools are not trained to be security first. And I think that's when these vulnerabilities start to happen. And I think that's the risk, is that it's awesome that people are vibe coding, and it's wonderful that more and more people have a chance to be builders and to do potentially really impactful work by solving these problems. But without that kind of fundamental knowledge of what the process looks like, or what that kind of ideal state looks like that you all have worked hard to cultivate, because it needs to be secure, I think that's risky, I think the other thing is the shadow IT angle. So if somebody like myself in a non-technical team is building a useful app that's solving a real problem, we probably aren't going to think of it as software that needs review or access controls or monitoring, right? Hey, look at this cool thing I built and shipped. On to the next. But I think, Rue, you would argue like that's maybe not the best path forward, right? So how do you think security teams should be approaching this without, of course, saying, no, you can't do it? Because I think we're past that. The train is outside of the station.
I think the thing that kind of stood out to me in this Wired story wasn't the fact that these apps had bugs, or the fact that, like Rue said, it was not malicious. Like, it was people working on normal things in normal environments. A lot of these projects were clearly kind of meant to be used internally at work. Think like dashboards, customer logs, business planning documents, records, admin style tools. But they ended up publicly reachable. And I think that, like, public versus private distinction is huge. and it's one that like requires infrastructure and people to think about how you publish these things, and there's a real nuance in those types of things that like needs a whole team to try and deliver. And the difference can be, let me spin this up, this is a helpful internal tool, and this is exposed to anybody who finds the URL.
And this isn't just an isolated case. There was another study that looked at more than 5,600 publicly available vibe-coded apps and said that it found more than 2,000 vulnerabilities, over 400 exposed secrets like API keys that we were talking about and tokens, and 175 cases of exposed personally identifiable information. So again, I think the message here is not that every vibe-coded app is dangerous, but what we're seeing is that this is becoming a real category of risk, especially when apps are created quickly and outside of that normal development process that engineering teams have been, I was going to say brought up, but, kind of conditioned and trained to do.
All of this, and we haven't even really mentioned the code itself yet, because there is a code quality angle here. One report comparing AI-assisted and human-written pull requests found that AI-authored requests contained about 1.7 times more issues overall, with security issues reported up to 2.74 times higher, which feels like an important stat, but I don't think the takeaway should be that AI writes bad code, because humans also write bad code. I think that AI can amplify the same kinds of mistakes, and it can do it at just greater speed and scale. And I think that to me is the bigger thing here, is that when you are moving 10 times as fast, you need to also have the systematic protections to be able to move that much faster. The code is not the thing. It is everything around the code. Like, does your continuous integration system support it? Does your security team have good review protocols in place to support this volume and things like that? So there's so much more beyond just the code.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think there was also a phishing element in the Wired piece that we've been talking about, where researchers found that AI-built phishing web pages impersonating major companies were starting to become really apparent. And I think what we're seeing is that this AI-powered phishing is really concrete. It's not just these better written scam emails now. It can be convincing forms, fake login pages, or full-looking sites that are quick to create and easy to publish. So again, the theme is speed and scale here, and these tools can help well-intended people to build faster, but they can also help attackers move faster or help regular employees make security mistakes faster. And I know we already hear about AI phishing quite a lot, but this makes it feel a bit more tangible, not just in emails, but with these full pages and forms that are being spun up really, really quickly that look very legitimate.
This might actually be a good place to talk about kind of practical steps. What would we want a team to do before vibe-coded apps became a common thing across the business?
I think that a lot of the rules, a lot of the guidance here is very similar to the guidance that we would share in general, which is understanding your risk profile, right? Like what is it you're building? What are the risks that exist around it? And then once you understand that risk profile, understanding the types of protections that you want to put in place to protect against those risks. So it might not be it might not be just as simple as like, hire a security team that's going to do an audit of your code, or make sure that you outsource to these audits or something like that. But like, the advice is generic because everyone's setup and needs are unique here. So I think that it really is understand risk, understand what you can't have go wrong based on that risk, and then from there figure out what protections you can reasonably set up to mitigate that risk.
I think one of the things that really helps if you're not in a company that is kind of set up to have someone else provide this kind of infrastructure and these kind of policy is taking another agent, informing that it's your new security team and getting it to provide kind of what we would historically call like the red team, blue team, like get it to kind of assess your app and see where the weaknesses are. I think that's a great kind of start to finding some of these things. And I don't think the takeaway from this is don't vibe code. I think the takeaway is like don't let vibe coding tools become invisible. and like don't take them for kind of granted. These things are generating software. The more useful that they get, the more people are going to use them, and honestly, like that can be a good thing. But organizations also need to treat, you know, AI built apps and workflows as real software with access to real data. And that means visibility, sensible guardrails, you know, reviews where they matter, and proper controls around credentials and secrets. And, you know, because the risk isn't just that AI might write imperfect code. I think the bigger risk is that imperfect code, sensitive data, and exposed credentials all end up on the kind of the public internet before anybody really realizes that the app exists.
All right. This feels like a good time to bring in our guest. And to keep us on the vibe coding theme, we brought in Jeff Malnick. Wade couldn't join us on the main call today, but he did recently sit down with Jeff to talk about how vibe coding is changing the developer landscape. They dive into everything from securely coding with AI to recommending tools and industry best practices. And with all that being said, I think we can probably just drop it in here.
Today on Random But Memorable, we're joined by Jeff Malnick, 1Password's VP of Engineering for Developer and AI. Jeff has extensive experience scaling security products. At 1Password, he plays a key role in binding dev tools that help developers work more efficiently and securely, whether they're coding by hand or with AI. Previously, as VP of Engineering at HashiCorp, Jeff helped grow and launch Vault, Boundary, and Radar, all focus on safely sharing and managing sensitive data. If there's one person we can trust on coding with AI while maintaining online security, it's Jeff. Jeff, thanks for coming and showing up. Hopefully you're having a good day so far.
Thanks, Wade. Really glad to be here.
Yeah. So Jeff, for the listeners who aren't familiar with the term, what exactly is vibe coding?
So vibe coding is the process of asking a large language model to write the software for you. And it's a completely automated process. You don't have to know how to write software. You don't have to understand actually much of anything other than how to use a chat interface. And you can pretty much build any software to your heart's content.
Okay. So it's similar to writing code, we'll say like in Cursor, and just like having AI do everything for you, right? Everything that falls under the same umbrella.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. I do a lot of vibe coding. It's definitely fun. You learn a lot of key terms that you didn't know beforehand, especially with coding, to get it to do the proper things, right?
Yeah.
But generating code through written prompts seems like usually it would remove like technical barriers or any other software barriers that usually people have. So who's out there actually vibe coding best suited for? Is it just like non-technical folks that are trying to build software, or developers? What do you think allows people to be most proactive?
You know, honestly, I don't think that there's really a boundary between who vibe coding is and isn't for. I think that vibe coding, you know, democratizes the process of writing code and allows people to bring things to life that they wouldn't otherwise be able to given a period of time. So, you know, for a seasoned software engineer, I think vibe coding is great for doing quick POCs or just an example of something. Case in point, I had an engineer on the team just the other week. We were working with an open source project and we wanted to showcase an integration with them. And it was great, just pointing cursor at their open source mono repo. And we were able to, you know, in a matter of 20 minutes, get something pretty much put together. You know, we didn't review it. We didn't really, you know, we just like saw the end result of what was built. That was a vibe coding session, in my opinion. In a real world situation where you're actually writing production grade software, you definitely want to put that through a process with the team and have it reviewed and all that good stuff. But, you know, for something quick and dirty, for software engineer, like, you know, seasoned professionals, I think find it very, very useful for that sort of thing. You know, then on the other side of the non-technical spectrum, you've got, you know, people who are doing revenue operations or are maybe HR professionals. And they need to put together some way to maybe bring multiple sources of information together in a single database. And they need a way to interact with that data. And typically, you know, you'd rely on some kind of internal tools team or an internal applications team to go and support tying multiple systems together, whether it's Salesforce and a number of other tools or whatever it might be. You don't need to do that anymore. You can do that on your own now. So that, you know, HR professional, that revenue operations person, they all are empowered now to go and build these things. And I think that that's why you see such a push in the industry right now to get people to adopt these tools and start using them. That awareness that you are now empowered to go and build these things is just starting to hit the workforce. And over time, I think it's just going to be, similar to how other tools get adopted within the industry, right?
Yeah. I'm really interested to see when it makes that adoption into the public in the personal life, right? Like what they start doing with it once they realize how. I feel like there's a lot of people out there using it, but when it becomes like the internet for people, I feel like it's going to get real crazy.
Yeah. I mean, you can ask Siri through CarPlay now to do ChatGPT lookups, And I've definitely been cruising down the highway and, asked Siri to ask ChatGPT about this thing that I'm seeing as I'm driving down the highway, like tell me a little bit more about that. And it's not like a multi-page essay that it's going to write, but definitely gets you a detailed answer. And it's basically right inside the car there. It's pretty nice.
I'm going to have to try that. That's pretty great. What do you think the main benefit of vibe coding is over, say, the old-fashioned way, right? For hobbyist projects or for professional dev teams?
Yeah, so I think for the experienced technical crowd, it's the ability to quickly POC. It's also the ability to quickly stub out something. I think there's a lot of I certainly spent a lot of my career, trying to get the structure of a project in place. Just that scaffolding takes quite a bit of time. There's a lot of copy paste maybe from previous projects and stuff. On top of that, there's also the, unit testing is a really great example of something that is very, very easy for you to go and review quickly. And it's very easy for AI to go and write. And I used to spend quite a bit of time, hand writing a lot of unit tests. Different types of test infrastructure, like a more complex integration test, for example, you still want to be like very close to that and making sure that you're hitting all the edge cases. What's useful for with AI in that circumstance, though, is adding edge cases, right? Like you, as a human, you're going to think of maybe a half dozen different edge cases that you want to get in there the first time around. You pump that through AI and, you can ask it, hey, like, do you have any other recommendations here? What do you think of this approach? And you can use it to rubber duck. We leaned heavily into pair coding before for those sorts of circumstances and review cycles, which have long feedback loops compared to just having AI at the, tips of your fingers and being able to access that right away. So I think that there's value there. I think what it doesn't replace is that it doesn't replace original thinking. I think that, there's still very much a place for humans to practice good judgment and original thought there and bring those ideas to life and maybe add a little extra spice to the, to what they're building.
Yeah, the creativity. In a couple of my projects, I have to go out and do research on other stuff that I'm trying to build, and then they give me ideas on like how to manipulate those ideas and go through. But it's fun times. It's so easy. What are some of the biggest security concerns you see as AI-assisted coding becomes the norm in software development?
I think the biggest concern for me, I've spent my entire career building systems to secure software development, right? At HashiCorp, when we built Vault, that was purely a system of machine-to-machine credentialing capabilities that just didn't exist in the industry beforehand. And what it brought to life was the ability for developers to remove static secrets from the software that they were writing, securely store that in Vault. And at the same time, we are able to dramatically reduce the number of, instances or occurrences of plain text secrets ending up in a GitHub repo or some other place where it shouldn't exist. Today, that whole process has been heavily commoditized, right? But at the same time, you still hear stories of, clear text credentials ending up in these different places. What's interesting with AI is that, where with Vault and some of these other previous tools, we were really focused on the GitHub repo and these other public places where the software might reside. And because of that, you don't want to have a clear text credential residing there. I think what we've always sort of assumed is that the laptop, it's, you put MDM on it to make sure that you're not going to get some bad malware installed on your machine. But by and large, like, it's a safe place to store a clear text credential, right? You see an environments configuration, you'll see an AWS configuration, you'll see any number of private SSH keys, et cetera. They're all in the clear, written to disk, right there on your laptop. And suddenly, we've basically allowed people to install these CLI, AI tools whether it's, Claude Code or OpenClaw or anything. And they have access to that file system. And all of a sudden, your local laptop's hard drive is basically public knowledge as far as that, AI bot is concerned that's helping you write code or, automate a workflow. So I think that a lot of people don't necessarily recognize that. They just installed these tools on their machines, assuming the, tried and true security principles that we've had in place all along. And that doesn't stand up anymore, right? That model of your laptop being a safe place is just not valid in the era of AI when we have these chatbots running locally. And so I think that that's where we run into the most friction. You see a lot of times, Cursor or other tools gain access to clear text environment files and other things. Those things end up in an LLM context. And, that's just not the right place for those credentials to end up at all. That downloads folder is like one of the first things that I think a lot of people give, local bots access to.
Yeah.
Is basically, downloads, documents, those primary Mac OS, those default folders. It gets a snapshot of your file system and it sees where everything is, can read all those things, and you've basically given it the keys to your kingdom. One of my colleagues described it as just walking out on the street and handing a perfect stranger your laptop.
As a security professional, it's just so scary having to deal with that, right? And then the modern day security too, while we're investigating that, hopefully the tool that the AI has logged into recognizes that it is an agent in some way, but sometimes it doesn't, right? And then it's hard to differentiate between the user and the AI. That's always the concern for me, at least, when hunting through these things.
Yeah.
What are some of the potential red flags our listeners can look out for that if AI tools are doing something potentially risky, like reading my downloads folder?
I mean, you'll get a notification, right? Like a lot of these tools like Cursor, like Claude Code, they all have guardrails in place that alert you to, that it's trying to get access to a different directory than it doesn't have access to now. There are settings in all of those tools to just completely turn that off and give it complete access to your file system. Outside of those guardrails that come within the products themselves, tools like 1Password, for a shameless plug here, are really, really valuable because, we have things like our environments feature in 1Password allows you to replace a clear text environments file that's written to disk with what is essentially a FIFO pipe. So it looks like a file for, anything traversing the file system. All it cares is that it sees this file descriptor there. Happens to be a FIFO pipe instead of an actual file that you'd be opening up. And when it opens it, 1Password intermediates that FIFO pipe and does per process prompting for access, right? So once it's stored in 1Password, if another process tries to open it, 1Password tells you the exact process that's trying to open it, and you have to give it a biometric to approve, gain access to that file. And then it's only, that it only lasts for the lifetime of your session with 1Password being open. So there is a TTL attached to that. It is per process. It's about as least privilege as we can get right now for, I think, that type of local workflow. We're in the process of building out a lot of different capabilities for hard-coded policies that we can put in place around those environment configurations. So you can say this agent and this human with these agents can get access to this thing for this amount of time. So there's a lot of work that we're doing there to simplify and create a higher security bar for those local workflows.
Besides 1Password, what do you think the most important thing a beginner should do when they start vibe coding? Don't
turn off the guardrails in the tool you're using, right? You don't want to go into YOLO mode right out the gate. Especially if you're a non-technical user, it's super convenient. Look, I get it. Like prompting every time AI needs to do something is annoying. Claude has a great feature called dispatch. It will work in the background and notify you on the phone if it needs, if he needs to do something additional. I think that you're going to see more and more capabilities like that to bring the human back into the loop. Maybe it's, re-authentication, maybe it's reauthorization, maybe it's both to another system that it discovered it needs access to. either way, I think, human in the loop is you shouldn't remove yourself from the loop. Instead, push these companies, push 1Password, push Claude, push OpenAI to go out and build the necessary guardrails that bring the humans back into the loop when they need to in a way that's not disruptive to, the productivity gains that we want to achieve with these tools.
Yeah, man. I think one of the bigger things that I've been more worried about too is me being a security professional. I have an elevated level of access to a lot of tools, right?
Yeah.
So then if I'm authing with OAuth, I have to be very careful because now if Claude uses that or OpenAI, they have elevated access. Recently, we've been on the kick of making read-only keys and making sure that it can access that and that only, going through 1Password, of course, but some fun things.
SSH keys are another thing that 1Password can secure.
Yep.
And that's also super valuable. It's very similar workflow to the environments.
So the phrase vibe coding, like we talked about earlier, was coined last year, but how do you think AI assisted tooling has changed over time since then? Is it still just vibing or are they like even deeper now?
I think it's becoming way more productive than it was previously. I think general productivity capabilities are better. When I say general productivity, I'm talking about, slideware, right? Just like, I think the original slides that, we were building with AI last year were just terrible. Well, I wouldn't even say last year. I would say my workflow 4 months ago, building out slides with AI was, my chat session in one window and then split pane with Google Slides open in the next. And, I'd feed it back into chat and I would ask it about like what it thinks and, give me some examples of this and that, like just kind of like rubber ducking with it a little bit to like really tune the message that I wanted to get across in each individual slide, making sure the general flow made sense. Now I'm seeing it generate the graphics and the slide simplicity and everything else, the style, that I want. For lack of a better description, the taste has gotten a lot better in terms of what it generates. And so that's really nice to see. I think that that's valuable. It goes way beyond, just writing code. I think the applications that it is writing I'm getting a lot more out of it with fewer tokens.
Okay.
Let's say that much,
All right.
I can generate, I remember generating 30,000 lines of code in an afternoon and not really feeling like I made a ton of progress on stuff. There's a lot of churn that went into it. And now I am achieving a lot more in one-shot scenarios.
Yeah. So in like terms of code quality, then you're really seeing AI do way better in both efficiency as well as just like overall code than say handwriting code now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I'll ever handwrite software ever again. And I'm okay with that.
With the increase of speed of coding, then there must be a lot more code for developers to review before deploying it. Is code review still important, or can we trust the output of vibe coding sessions?
Oh man, this is this is controversial.
Yeah, this is what.
There's a lot of schools of thought on this. I'll give you my personal school of thought on it. I think there's a spectrum of risk that we take, and sufficiently talented software engineer is going to know how to assess that risk in the best way possible. I think for 75% of the code that we generate probably doesn't need to have a human review it. And in fact, you wouldn't want to, right? Like case in point, you're able to generate tens of thousands of lines of code a day, right? Back in the day, like a good day for me writing code was, 1, maybe 2,000 lines of code a day, right? Like when I was handwriting it, and that was like tested, like I'm getting the PR and I feel pretty good about this. And you never wanted to submit a PR that was more than 200 lines, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of tells you what the human context window is. Like 200 lines, right? Go divide 30,000 lines of code that you generated today by 200 lines and how many people hours that's going to take in review cycles to, have it reviewed. It's not going to be productive for us to do that. So I think for the strong majority of cases, we want AI to be the reviewer, and we need to make it so that that AI review actually pulls the human in for, really sensitive topics if it finds something, right? And then for like the 10, 20% of code that needs to have a real human review, we need to be intentional about how we pull those humans in, how the time is used. I think that a lot of people there's definitely a camp out there that believes that software engineering is going to die and AI is going to take everybody's software jobs. I don't believe that. I actually think it's creating a world where really good software engineers are more valuable than ever, because those are the folks that are going to be able to say, this is what's important for me to review. This is important for AI to review. This is the stuff I'm going to spend my time on. And the time that a human gets pulled into the loop there is actually going to be some of the most valuable time that engineer spends in their career in software, right? Like that is actually increasing the value of those software engineers, because they're the minority of use cases where the risk is so high that we can't rely on an automated workflow to go and just be okay with it. We're going to pull a human in the loop and have them do that. That to me says that human is more valuable than ever, because they are responsible for reviewing the most valuable and risky parts of the code base.
I floated the idea of doing a prompt injection to everyone's cursor, adding to the end of any prompt, make sure the code is secure, so I don't have to worry about it. But yeah, Dan, it's great. I couldn't imagine even reviewing 200 lines of code for me. Like, I don't want to do that ever again. I don't want to look at code. Like, that's a lot. Like many productive hacks, it seems like vibe coding can be a useful tool or potential risk. What are some of the best practices developers can follow to balance speed versus security, you think?
I mentioned this before. Don't YOLO with AI. First and foremost, it doesn't matter what tool you're using, just don't YOLO with AI. Be intentional about what you're building. If you're a non-technical person, you're picking up these tools, that's awesome. Keep digging in, but also work on educating yourself. It's a different world. You don't need to be a principal software engineer with 30 years in the industry to understand the basics of security. Check out the OAuth top 10. Understand what the lethal trifecta is, understand how to mitigate that and the stuff that you're building. Your security team will thank you for it.
We will.
These are really basics. It's going to take you about 10 minutes to read through these things and kind of understand the workflows. And, going into it with that more educated mindset is, it'll give you leverage in terms of what you can do with AI in the future.
For developers moving from an AI-assisted IDE to more of the CLI tools, we'll say like Claude Code or Codex, what should they be most aware of or concerned in terms of level of access they're providing or the device itself?
Yeah, don't give any of these tools full access to your file system if you can avoid it. To the greatest extent possible, if you need to operate on sensitive data or, anything that might be confidential or sensitive, leverage a sandbox environment if you can. Your laptop's a great environment to be on, but your laptop also has browsers that are logged into various, third-party tools and for your company. It also contains a file system that just has troves. Like, I dare anybody to go through their file system today and tell me about every single piece of confidential information, all their directories, downloads, folders. These things are stored all over the place on your machine. It's just unavoidable. So, to the greatest extent possible, point these tools at sandbox environments where you can run securely, especially if you need to give it access to a file system. You just don't want to be sitting there it'll save you time too, right? Like you're going to get notification fatigue if it's trying to access a file system on your laptop and it's like, hey, downloads directory, documents directory, MNT, like what are the places that I need to get to do something? It's a lot easier for you to just say, it's in a sandbox. I can just give it access to everything here. And I'm feeling pretty safe about that, right? A lot of the sandbox tools out there today, whether it's, Vercel sandboxes or Daytona, a lot of these tools have some really great built-in security capabilities. We're really proud to be partnering with a lot of those companies so we can bring 1Password into those environments in a very secure way. Imagine a world where you can just provide an op://URI to the vault item that you need to get access to. There's no clear text credentials on the file system at all, and you're in complete control. And so I think that's, those are really important. If you don't have access to a sandbox, though, just tread lightly. Don't YOLO stuff. Don't give it full file system access.
Yeah. Don't allow it to access that for the whole coding duration, right? Like I always do the one-time access each time. And when it's very tempting to say, yeah, you can access that for the rest of the session, but a little scary. Yeah. Speaking of 1Password CLI a lot, We recently announced a hook into Cursor, which is an AI-assisted IDE. We've been talking about the benefits of how that works, at least in a bunch of other stuff. Is there anything in particular you think it would benefit more within Cursor than our normal coding sessions?
Yeah, so we're actually partnering with Cursor right now to develop a set of skills for 1Password, hoping to use those skills and obviously other tools as well. We have a really great set of benchmarks that we published recently. Jason Meller, VP of Product here at 1Password, put that together. And it basically benchmarks a LLM's ability to avoid being scammed. And so I think that there's a lot of work that we're doing there. Some of those benchmarks and stuff were drastically improved with applying skills-based mechanisms to increase awareness about the problem statement and stuff for the LLM. And I think that that's something that we can lean into more. We're also doing integrations. We've got a hook for GitHub Actions. And, we've got VS Code integrations and stuff. So one of the great things about 1Password is that one of our mottos is that we build security into the places where work gets done. And today that work is increasingly done in IDEs and terminals. And, I'm super proud to be working for a company that's just very, very bullish on building security directly into those tools, because honestly, as a security professional, I've built many security tools throughout my career. The minute the user's workflow requires them to leave the tool they're in to secure it, you're done. You're not going to get the traction you need. So I think that, a lot of these integrations are super, super valuable for the community, especially non-technical users. So definitely check them out.
Yeah. One thing I always suggest people who are using 1Password and learning out how to code, I just tell them, just ask whatever AI assistant you are how to set it up, and it will help you set it up, and then you'll be safe, hopefully. What are some of the ways 1Password developer and AI teams manage this internally while building 1Password identity management software? So like using our own product, right, and dog fooding it.
Yeah, I use all of our tools. So I use our SSH tools, our environments tools pretty religiously. We also have a series of shell extensions, and I know a lot of team members leverage those environments and SSH capabilities more than anything.
Yeah. Having it be able to go grab those keys and then at least alert you to it. The other part is due to device manager, right? Our device manager on here. I have been yelled at several times for having a key somewhere that I didn't realize it was there. And it's like, you better go put this in 1Password. And I'm like, okay, fine. Like, or you're going to be locked out. Like, it was great.
Yeah. We've got some really great, the device trust product is phenomenal. It's where our core AI discovery capabilities reside too. So you can do quite a bit in terms of setting up a policy that says, hey, I don't want to have a developer expose any clear text environment configuration. If you find a clear text environment configuration on this developer's laptop, we're going to restrict their access to Claude and to OpenAI, to these other, company mandated tools. And I think that that's a very powerful thing. One of the best things about that capability, by the way, is that in one click, a developer, when they actually get blocked in the browser, it's one click. It takes you right to the password manager product, to a fresh environments install. It says, would you like us to import it? You import it, you go back to the browser, you refresh, and you're done.
Yeah. It's awesome. So for anyone who wants to try vibe coding, what tools would you actually recommend first?
I really like Claude Code. I think that, Claude in particular, between Code and Cowork, are really amazing. For non-technical users, Cowork does some really sophisticated stuff. It's way easier, I think, to grok and handle than just traditional Claude Code in terms for those non-technical users. For experienced developers, Claude Code is obviously like a go-to for me. I also like Cursor. It's kind of funny. I spoke a lot about how AI democratizes software engineering. It also democratizes wireframing and a lot of other stuff that you might need other parts of your R&D organization to go work on that might not necessarily be an engineering task. And so I oftentimes find myself wireframing stuff with Cursor, with Claude Code.
I find this part of like my career with AI, it feels like when I first started in cybersecurity, there's just so many things to learn that I'm like looking all over the place, especially with Claude Code, right? Like trying to learn memory, skills, agents, hooks, and just going through it. It's a really fun time to start vibe coding.
The other thing too is, like as an organization, I think folks should be investing in, we talked a little bit about PR reviews. There's tools out there like CodeRabbit. And I know that, GitHub's building stuff in now as well that allows you automated code reviews. I think more and more that is going to be necessary, and that we need to become more comfortable with having AI be a primary reviewer for, a large majority of the code that we produce. And, putting tools in that workflow that allows us to surface the high risk code that does need human approval.
With that needing approval, let's talk about like how has planning and implementing new features changed for dev teams as they AI assisted coding tools become more integrated into the workflows?
I talked about this a little bit earlier, but a lot of that review cycle is a big piece of it. And I think that like the whole software development life cycle is sort of turned up on its head. Traditionally you'd go through like a design phase that might last weeks or even a month, or months, depending on how big the project was. And then you might prototype something and get a little bit more review on that feedback, use that to feed back into your design. What I'm seeing now is, and this is probably controversial, but I think it's pretty cool. People are skipping the design phase and just jumping into prototypes because they can, because, tokens aren't necessarily cheap, but the fact that we're producing so many of them tells us that they're cheaper than time. So, the trade-off is pay for the token to get your time back. And that allows people to go and prototype something rapidly without a firm design in place, just get a feel for a workflow or an integration or something like that. And so I see the software development lifecycle changed probably for the better in that way, that reducing time to value in a way that's really healthy, I think, for us as R&D organizations and as engineering teams. I'm seeing a lot more people come into the fold with those prototypes that aren't necessarily engineers. Engineering managers, product managers, all sorts of, designers are coming in. It's really, really cool to see that sort of blending of those capabilities. I think over time, like if you look at R&D today, it's like an engineering product design organization. Over time, I think we're going to collapse that into like a single engineer design product person, right? And I think the folks who are really going to excel in these areas are folks who can have a really good feel for good design, right? And what it means, how to bring the customer perspective and customer voice into what they're building and blend that with the design of what they're building and bring design first principles into those projects. And then a really great understanding of systems, right? I think that as software engineers, a lot of people are kind of bummed that we're becoming, engineers are becoming software reviewers, but I think it's actually way more expansive than that. If you think that the future of software engineering is just reviewing code, you're taking a pretty myopic view of what's actually happening here. You're becoming a product manager, you're becoming a designer. You have to review some code occasionally, but you should definitely understand the systems of that code and understand what it's interacting with and how to design a good system. Because there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, and AI is going to give you one of them, and you need to be able to have an opinion about that.
This is good. That was a really good answer. Personally, has vibe coding taught you anything valuable in the coding process or allowed you to accomplish anything you previously thought was impossible?
I think just the rapid iteration of things, like I work a lot with external partners. I work a lot with different communities and stuff. And a demo says thousands of words, right? And so I think the ability for me to just like sit down and do that without having to, interrupt a team that has a bunch of planned work and is trying to execute on milestones is really valuable for the organization. I think as an engineering team, what I'm seeing is more and more of these like demos and, hey, like this is a possible path for us. Here's what a possible integration looks like. I think people feel more empowered to explore, and that's really, really important for innovation.
All right. Okay, so this next question is going to be a little bit harder. I want you to put your fortune teller hat on. Where do you think the future of vibe coding and AI assisted coded is heading, and what role does security play in it?
I think security is going to play an ever-increasing role. If you're building this stuff and you don't understand where the security, like how to actually apply really good security controls, it's more likely than not that you're going to end up shipping something that's poorly designed. Security is just one of those underlying threads of whatever you're building, right? You've got like a business case to go build something. You've got the security controllers around it to make sure that, you're doing right by your customer and their privacy, and you're doing right by your company's IP. Because we are building through a process that relies on a probability distribution, I think a concept of risk is going to be more and more present. And when I say risk, like it's already present today in every security model, threat model that you look at, right? There's like a risk analysis there. But I think that we're going to be able to quantify that in a way that is more potent for what it is that we're building. I think we'll be seeing AI, driving a lot of those risk models themselves. Ideally, there'll be, very small, I think, focused models for just that risk analysis. I was looking at the other day, OpenAI shipped a new, privacy redaction filtering capability. And they basically built a small model focused on just that redaction capability, right? It is technically as a classifier. And I think you'll see more and more of that sort of thing kind of pop out, right? Like when we're looking at how do we use AI to do just-in-time policy evaluation? Well, kind of looks like that redaction architecture that OpenAI just launched for making sure that you don't have sensitive information inside of your prompts and stuff. So I think that we'll see more and more of that more targeted approach and application of AI in large language models or small language models. I think that that's going to be probably the future of our industry too. Like security is going to be more focused on how do we get a really accurate risk analysis in place here, because we essentially have these actors that, humans are the long-time non-deterministic actor in the system that we've been trying to build for. It's not that the protocols to go secure a non-deterministic actor in these systems doesn't exist. Like we've been building these for 40, 50 years, right? Like multi-party systems have always had in their design the concept of a non-deterministic human actor that can't be trusted. What's different is that the machine workloads that we've secured and the protocols around those machine workloads did not have that concept of at the same level, right? Like we've built those workflows for humans. Approvals workflows are like the classic version of this. We got to do this in a headless way for machine workloads. And so there's a lot of different protocols and standards getting evaluated and pushed out there right now to do these sorts of things. But the industry is kind of playing catch up in that way.
Definitely. I would say even like security is still playing catch up, right? Like we're moving so fast, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. To wrap it up, for one last question, if our listeners want to learn more about vibe coding, where is the best place to start?
I had a shameless plug for 1Password. I want to shamelessly plug it one last time because I might be biased, but I think that what we're building is pretty cool. And, I know 1Password isn't traditionally known as a developer security company. We've got a great set of capabilities in the space right now. I'm really excited about some of the stuff we're going to be launching later this year around agentic security in particular. We're super focused on providing new capabilities to secure machine workloads. Those could be traditional workloads like a CI/CD workflow, or it could be an AI agent. And I'm really proud of the stuff that we're building. And if you're struggling with securing these sorts of systems, choose a tool and learn as much as you can about that tool. I think rule of thumb, educate yourself on the security protocols that are out there, right? OAuth's top 10, the lethal trifecta. Know those two things, then study the tool that you're going to use. You don't need to be a hardcore software engineer. You just need to know the basics of what it's doing. And I think that that's going to get you a lot of leverage in terms of what you can do and staying secure while you do it.
Jeff, thank you very much for joining us today on the show. It's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot, even with stuff that we're working on. Super enjoyed it.
Really appreciate the time, Wade. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Wade and Jeff, for that really insightful conversation. If you've been thinking about giving vibe coding a try, or maybe you've already dipped your toes in the water and want to put in some security best practices, hopefully that was a really good motivation conversation for you. We've run out of time for Ask 1Password today, but if you have a question for us, please get in touch at podcast@onepassword.com, and we'll make sure to answer them in our new season. Or if we get a load, we'll do a mailbug bonus episode. All questions welcome, even if it's asking Sarah how her trip to Pokemon Go Fest was.
All right, with that, I think it's time to wrap up this season and our 170th episode with identity theft.
It's identity theft. Guess who they're claiming to be? Fire your yes or no questions for security and catch that fake ID.
No idea what the last few words there were. But welcome to Identity Theft, our identity guessing game. This might be the last time we ever play this, as we usually like to bring in a new game for each season. So for one last time, here's a quick recap of the rules. I, the host, have stolen the identity of a well-known person, celebrity or fictional character. Ali and Rue are going to ask me yes or no questions to narrow down who I am, and at any point, when they think they know who I am, they can buzz in. Now, to buzz in, they will either shout single factor or multi-factor. If they shout out single factor, they can name who I am, get it correct, and earn 1 point. If they shout out multi-factor, they have to name me, who I am, and give 2 correct facts about me. If they can do this, they earn 2 points. That's the rules out of the way. So it's time to give you my clue on whose identity I've stolen today, which is changing identities was part of my art.
Single factor. Are you Superman?
No.
Oh, damn it. I was really hoping I was going to get that just right out the gate.
Wow, I got really nervous that was going to be it.
That was in for a penny, in for a pound
so
there.
Bold. Okay, I have a question. Are you a cartoon character?
I am not.
Are you a fictional character?
I think at some point I have been in cartoons. I will just add that on top.
Okay, wait. I want you to answer Rue's question.
Are you a fictional character?
No.
You
I was
go.
just going to say, can you reread the thing? Changing identities is part of the job?
Changing identities was part of my art.
Part of your art.
Are you somebody that creates paintings?
No. Although I think at some point they did create paintings.
Stop.
But they are not a painter.
Are you an actor?
They did act in some things, but they would not be what you describe as an actor. They are not known for acting.
Goodness gracious.
So you're not are you a person?
Yes.
A non-fictional person.
That maybe has done paintings, but isn't a painter.
I really have to go
and
to
maybe...
the next meeting. Would it help if I did an impression of the person?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello. I thought that was pretty good.
Richard Attenborough?
No.
You Dumbledore?
No.
I have no idea.
I starred in films as well as making music, but I'm known for music.
Oh,
I was famous in the 1970s. Yeah, go for it.
Are you David Bowie?
I am.
Good one.
I'm going to say that you absolutely got that from my impression there.
No, I had luckily forgotten that impression. It just got ejected from my brain. Oh my gosh.
David Bowie was one of the most influential musicians and performers of all time, known not just for his music, but for constantly reinventing his identity. Across his career, David Bowie created famous alter egos like Ziggy Stardust and the Thin White Duke. Never heard of that one. Using different personas to explore new sounds, styles, and ideas, he treated identity almost like a performance art, deliberately blurring the line between the real person and the character audiences saw on stage. That constant reinvention made him a perfect fit for the final round of Identity Theft.
Incredible. Well, that's the end of the season. If you've been sticking with us this far and tuning into every episode, thanks so much for choosing to spend your time with us. We really appreciate your support and all your questions and comments over the years we've been doing this. We'll be taking a brief break now while we plan the next season, but not before we drop a couple of special bonus episodes. And I'm sure Anna will give you all outtakes and things that have never been heard before, things that weren't supposed to make it to the air will now show up somewhere. I love committing to things that Anna hasn't committed to herself. So keep a listen out for those soon. And don't worry, because we'll be back to kick off a brand new season over the summer. Remember, if you want to show your support for the show, you can review us on your favorite podcast app or subscribe to our random but memorable YouTube channel. Like, comment, smash that bell, whatever YouTube wants you to do these days. And if you're a developer, be sure to go to developer.onepassword.com, sign up for our developer newsletter. We'll put the sign up link in the show notes and the YouTube video description. And with that, I think we can close out our 170th episode. Thank you both for a fun one.
Thank you.
You guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.